following broadcast contains discussions of suicide, sexual assault, homophobia, eating disorders, and school shootings. Listener discretion is advised. If you should need help, the number for the suicide hotline is listed in the description below. Thank you.
Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to another episode of From the Margins with Violet and Connor. I'm Connor Renfro.
And I'm Violet Knight.
All right, Violet, how are you doing tonight?
Weirdly congested, so if I sound very strange or if I cough a little bit, please forgive me.
Great. Just another sick girl.
It's snowing outside.
Wow. It is April 16th, and Denver, Colorado is getting snow.
Well, I'm sorry, Connor. The global climate change is kind of doing this. I think Boulder had its snowiest year on record this year.
Do you know what I like to do when it snows outside?
Probably masturbate?
I like to stay in and listen to musicals.
I do too. I've especially been enjoying it recently.
So, Violet, what musical have we been obsessed with as of late?
That's Heathers the Musical.
Right. I watched the original movie like many years ago, and I wasn't that impressed. But then somehow we fell upon videos of the musical, and Violet and I decided to watch them together, and Violet had no idea what the show was about.
I had never seen the movie. I knew that the musical existed. I knew that the movie existed, but I just thought it was like Mean Girls, but in the 80s. I did not know what I was getting into.
Yeah, so that was really fun to like hear her reaction.
I was shooketh. I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty shook.
So after listening to the soundtrack, we ended up watching the movie again, and then we found a live stream of a 2018 performance so that we could like see it live-ish. And now we're going to compare the two.
We're going to compare the live performance with the actual movie performance. However, it is important to notice that this particular live performance was done in 2018 and was not part of the original 2014 running. Or was it 2013? It was the earlier 2010s.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter. It's not the original Broadway production at all.
Right.
Revisions had been made to it. It differs from the soundtrack a little bit, but basically we get the gist of it.
Exactly.
So in this first episode, we will be discussing the first act of the musical and comparing it to the plot of the movie, and we'll just give some like steaming hot takes as we go through it.
Precisely.
So Violet, introduce us to our opening number.
I have to say, this is one of the strongest opening numbers I've ever seen in a musical, and I've seen a few musicals. It is the beautiful song, Beautiful, in which our protagonist Veronica sings about her time joining the Heathers social group in her high school.
Yeah, she shows us Westerberg High. She introduces some themes of like, my high school is a battleground. Everybody hates each other even though we all used to be friends. By the end of the song, she meets the Heathers and joins their clique. One of the key changes from the movie into the musical is they got rid of the character of Betty Finn and made Martha Dunstock Veronica's childhood best friend. They start off the musical as friends, and they're going to watch The Princess Bride for the umpteenth time, which I think is a fun little Easter egg because Princess Bride is all about a renegade male lead who does anything for his princess, with a dynamic that gets subverted in this musical.
Connor, I have a confession to make. I've never actually seen The Princess Bride.
That's fine. I'm not actually a fan of it.
Okay, I know there
which
are
is
many
blasphemy to say.
There are very many people in my life who are, so that's why I had to preface it like that. But throughout the course of this song, we follow Veronica as she starts to tail the Heathers to the bathroom, and she saves the Heathers from getting a week's detention by forging a hall pass with all of their names on it and getting their attention because they see that she can be useful. We also learn from this that Veronica's very good at plagiarizing documents, a point that will come up later.
Right, that was also something in the movie, but I don't think it was that big of a deal in the beginning.
Not in the beginning, but they made sure to really highlight it for the musical.
Right.
Rightfully so.
Oh, right, they do in the movie. Okay, we'll get to that later, but there is a scene where they establish her forging abilities. Mm-hmm. The musical starts before the events of the movie, though. Like, this establishment song is huge. My biggest note is when the Heathers get introduced, Veronica's kind of narrating for the audience's sake that the Heathers float above it all, which is an interesting way to say it because it's like kind of not true. The Heathers are like bullies. Like, Veronica thinks that, you know, these beautiful popular girls are untouched by everything, but actually they're like rigidly maintaining the power structure by being the bullies, by being the head bitches. But I don't know, I guess from an outsider perspective it would seem like they were floating above it all.
Exactly. I know that I'm technically skipping ahead by saying this, but as the outsider, she sees the Heathers as being somewhat of a cloud floating above it all. But once she becomes accepted and actually kind of, not revered, but trusted by the Heathers, she sees it more as a building or a structure. It's walls and a roof. It's not floating above it. It is setting the parameters for everything else happening around her.
Right. So on that note, let's move into the next song, Candy Store.
One of my personal favorites.
Tell me what you're waiting for. Step into my candy store.
That was lovely.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So the musical does like a 3-week time jump, and then Veronica's firmly inside of the Heathers, and she is kind of already over it. She just sees that they're like rude and they're mean and they're bullies. That's what the entire song is about, basically.
Right.
Do you have anything to note?
Candy Store is one of the first times we actually see the Heathers demonstrate this in-group, out-group mentality in their personal lives, because they give Veronica an ultimatum that if she's going to continue to be part of the Heathers, she has to betray one of her best friends, Martha. The Heathers make her forge a note from her crush, Ram Sweeney, one of the football players, inviting her to a party that's happening that weekend. And if she doesn't forge that note and give it to Martha, or hide it and make it seem like it's from Ram, then they're just going to disown her, and she's going to be outright disowned by the Heathers. And even though she's fighting this power structure of the Heathers, she still realizes it's useful and wants to continue to be a part of it as long as possible.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. She's not fighting them at all.
Right. She's putting up only really token resistance.
This note forgery happens in both the movie and the musical. So that's not a big change or anything.
Right.
What strikes me is like how the Heathers are coded masculine in this song. They're like, you know, we want to perpetuate violence. We want to smoke and drink and fuck. And also, in one of the refrains, they tell Veronica to stop being a pussy. So it's not like they're interested in like being feminist icons or anything. They're like adopting masculinity, in my reading of it at least. It's like they've just taken and appropriated a more masculine authoritarian voice for their regime.
You're absolutely right. Heather Chandler, the main Heather, even at one point says, "Why don't you stop pulling on my dick?"
Exactly. Whoa. Why are you pulling on my dick?
Exactly. That's about as overt as it gets, folks.
And then as far as the movie is concerned, at this point in the musical is pretty much where the movie starts. We don't see Veronica fall in with the Heathers. And if anything, it's kind of implied that Veronica and Heather Chandler were like best friends since middle school at least. Like they have a history. They have an established history together. So the change that they do here is really interesting. I think it's in order to highlight a theme of like power and hierarchy in a high school setting.
Right.
Put Veronica on the outside first, show her integrate, and then illuminate what comes next.
Exactly.
So what comes next, Violet?
From within this power structure, we see a little bit of a glimpse of outside of the power structure whenever a new kid comes to town. That new kid is JD, the out-of-towner who suddenly is integrated into this high school and is not having a very easy time as he starts fighting Kurt and Ram, the two most popular football players.
Right, they have like this slow motion fight sequence while Veronica just sings this like love ode to him, even though she has no idea who he is.
Absolutely.
The song is Fight For Me.
It's not a bad song. It really does capture everything we need to know about the relationship early on. Veronica has fetishized the idea of JD because he is an outsider. One thing that's very interesting is she really couches a lot of her attraction to him in the idea of him being violent. Him being this overthrower of the structure of her high school and her life.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's like how the song starts. She's like, why do guys always fight? But when it comes to this, it feels so right, or something like that.
That's pretty much exactly what she says.
So in the movie, he's just some like loner in the back wearing like a leather jacket, and she's like into him because he's hot, you know? I mean, the movie doesn't like take a long time showing that like she's making eyes at him from across the room, and then she goes over and talks to him.
Right. At bare minimum, you could maybe call him mysterious, but he is not like starting a fight immediately upon getting there like he is in the musical.
And then in the production we watched of the musical, they changed his character from being like leather jacket, store brand James Dean to being like incel school shooter with a hoodie, which makes sense, but it's like definitely 2018 sensibilities versus 1989.
It was very interesting to see all of the different 2018 version changes that they put on to Heathers, the movie. The writing for modern audiences was very overtly felt. It was very strange to see. Like at one point they make a reference to the 2016 election and it felt so out of place and stilted. It made me wonder, alright, are we supposed to be in 1989 or not? Because all of the events take place in 1989. Even at the opening of the musical, it says, Veronica says to her diary, you know, it's 1989.
It's like September 30th, 1989.
So then to make a tongue-in-cheek reference to 2016, they actually say specifically the 2016 election.
I think that was like the production, though. It's like community theater. They had to like wink, nod at the audience a little more.
It's true. That anachronism was just really weird and distracting.
And it only happened in one song. It like really took me out of it.
Right. I wish I could remember what song
it was. The Me Inside of Me.
Oh.
Because that's getting way too far ahead. So let's go back to Fight for Me. JD, whose name is Jason Dean, like he's so obviously supposed to be James Dean, a figure that people in the 80s would actually care about.
Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with the production we watched because it's like, who would be attracted to like this incel hoodie person? Like it's so outside of what an involuntary celibate school shooter is as an archetype.
Right.
But I guess the soundtrack itself takes pains to say like Veronica's instantly attracted to him because he's fighting, because she's now assimilated to power, and here she sees somebody who's like actively resisting it.
Exactly. They're not complacently existing within the power structure or sitting at the top of it. They are actually trying to fight, whether from within or without. They are at least doing something and recognizing that there is a disparity existing between students.
And shortly after we see how Veronica feels about JD, we get to hear him sing a song about his life.
It's true. Would you like to talk about it, Connor?
Freeze your brain. I don't know the words well enough to continue.
Something, something, get lost in the pain. Who needs
cocaine?
Yeah, it's a song all about drinking ices from 7-Eleven.
Yeah, Violet has strong feelings about 7-Eleven.
It's true, I do have strong feelings about 7-Eleven in terms of musicals. I like 7-Eleven, like, don't get me wrong, it's a great place, I go there all the time. But there are more than one musical. There are several musicals I can name off the top of my head that include 7-Eleven as part of their performance, and it's very weird. There's also a reference to Mountain Dew later in this musical that also fucks with me. There's some strange commercialism going on, and I'm convinced that it's actually like a secret.
Well, my theory about 7-Eleven is that there's a 7-Eleven on every corner in Midtown Manhattan where Broadway is located, so the people who are writing these musicals just spend all of their time there anyway.
Very possible. I just know Be More Chill also involves 7-Eleven and Mountain Dew.
So the whole point of the song is JD is introducing himself to Veronica, talking about his terrible life with his like negligent or absentee whatever father, his dead mom, and how he uses 7-Eleven slushies to give himself brain freeze as a way to like numb the pain.
7-Eleven slushies were the father that he had but never gave him attention.
That's how he like creatively self-harms in a PC way.
It's a very unique way to self-harm, to say the least, but, I mean, I'll endorse that before I do any other means.
He has this line in the song about learning how to make pasta and pay rent, which it like hits me every time because I'm like, why? His dad is there. Is he just like really negligent? I mean, the dad appears in the musical very little. I think in maybe like one scene. He honestly doesn't even need to be in the musical. His presence would be felt even more through his absence.
Agreed.
But like in the movie, he's a big deal. He's like a celebrity demolition guy. Why can't he, get his life together to pay rent? Why doesn't he have an assistant who pays his rent? Okay, that's a thing. Like, in the movie, every single character is, like, super rich and loaded.
Absolutely.
In the musical, it's, like, only the Heathers and the Kurt and the Rams who are rich, I guess.
Well, JD's still considered to be rich in the musical. It at least alludes to it.
Oh, okay.
Because Veronica still mentioned she's seen JD's dad's commercial.
I mean, you don't have to be rich to have a commercial.
True, but if you're going to be he also talks about how he's been moving around as part of the business for
so
like
this
years
is like
and years.
national demolition chain with commercials.
Exactly.
They're not just like
Because
local cable commercials.
Right, because he's lived from Las Vegas to Boston. The commercials have still been playing in Ohio. I think what happened is the fact that after JD's mother died, those were responsibilities that were usually delegated to her. The dad just strikes me as one of those really conservative 80s dads who's like, well, she's gone. Time for you to step up. You do the things she used to do. And he's just really hardline about it because it just now occurred to me who JD's father reminds me of. Just now. He reminds me of Bob Pataki from Hey Arnold. He is like Helga's dad from Hey Arnold, but a little bit more aggressive. That is exactly something Bob Pataki would do. And that is whenever there's a power vacuum, it's like, okay, the kid has to step up. I'm not going to hire an assistant. That's just more money to spend. Why would I do that when I have a child?
Yeah, but like, doesn't his office have a secretary? I don't know.
Ostensibly.
Making pasta, that makes sense. Like, cooking your own meals, that makes sense if like the dad works all night. But paying rent, that's a really weird thing to put on your kid. I don't know.
It is, but I'm not saying it's...
Maybe they just needed it to like rhyme.
Possibly.
So that was a really long conversation about that song.
Not to freeze your brain or anything.
I'm going to freeze my brain after we're done recording.
And then it's going to be big fun.
Big fun.
Big fun.
Big fun.
I have a soft spot for Big Fun, I'm not going to lie. It's such a unique little song, but it fits so well.
Do you remember what function Big Fun was in the movie?
I know. Wasn't it the name of a band?
Yeah, it was the name of the band with the hit song Teenage Suicide. Don't do it.
God help us all.
I wish that song was in the musical.
I wish so too, but they just made a very tenuous reference to it.
So in Big Fun, Ram Sweeney is throwing a homecoming party and the entire school is invited. In the movie, what happens is Heather Chandler takes Veronica to a college party and it's just the two of them and all these college students. I think it's like a favor.
Right.
Or something.
It was doing a favor.
Because like Heather Chandler and Veronica are supposed to be like actual best friends. And Heather's like, this is going to be our first big college party. Don't embarrass me. She tries to like give Veronica to this creep who wants to have sex with her and Veronica refuses and makes a scene. Heather Chandler gets embarrassed and then Veronica throws up on her. And that's not what happens in the musical.
Right. In the musical, like we said, it's at Ram Sweeney, one of the football players' party, but they're all high school students. Veronica does get intoxicated. She gets really drunk and also high. Combination of both. She crossfades.
Is that weed? Hey, I want to hit.
Exactly. She starts being a little bit too loose-lipped with the Heathers, and she also... I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but she does end up throwing up on Heather, I think.
Yeah, she still throws up on her. Because they have all of the same iconic lines, like one-liners, you know. I gave you this and you repay me in puke. Lick it up, baby. Lick it up.
That's hot. Anyway,
that's in both mediums.
It is. Big Fun also serves a very important plot point because this is the party that Veronica invited Martha to earlier in the musical performance. But Martha, her best friend from childhood, thinks Ram, the host, and her childhood crush invited her. So when Martha shows up expecting Ram to reciprocate and be very happy that she's there and he's indifferent, she takes it personally.
Well, I mean, he's not just indifferent. He's also kind of hostile. He's like, why are you so weird? Nobody would hate you if you were just normal. And then he like spits on her.
Oh yeah, because she brought sparkling cider instead of alcohol and he spits it out on her. Oh God, why was everybody in the 80s awful? I mean, everybody now is awful too, but in a very different way.
The Heathers decide they're going to like completely destroy Martha, and Veronica saves Martha by sacrificing herself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really dramatic way of saying like she sends Martha home, and Heather Chandler causes the scene that happens in the movie where she's like, "You're canceled. 8 a.m. on Monday, you're dead.
Right.
You can transfer to Washington, you can transfer to Jefferson, but no one at Westerberg High is going to play your little reindeer game.
Exactly.
Why can I quote this so well?
Because we have done nothing but watch this musical and movie for the past week, Connor. That's why.
Why would you out us like that?
Because people need to know that we are experts in Heather lore right now.
So the end of the song basically states that Veronica's canceled, which leads us into the next song. Take it away, Violet.
It's called Dead Girl Walking.
The demon queen of high school has decreed it. She says Monday 8 a.m. I'll be deleted.
But yes.
So yeah, she's a dead girl walking.
She's ruminating on the fact she's now been excommunicated from the Heathers. I almost called them the Veronicas. That is not that.
Veronica just finds another Veronica and they form a girl band.
They form a girl band. They start making some pretty kick-ass music. Go listen to the Veronicas.
I feel so untouched right now.
But yeah, so she's been excommunicated by the Heathers. She realizes that she just committed social suicide. And she's like, you know what? I can't get any lower in the caste system of Westerberg High. Time to lay all the cards on the table. I'm going to JD's house, that incel, and I'm going to just rock his world.
Sorry to wake you, but I've decided I must ride you till I break you.
She was not beating around the bush. She was just laying it out there.
Slap me, pull my hair, touch me there.
Connor's lyrics are very much on point.
Anyway.
That's exactly what happened.
But in the movie, it's JD who breaks into her bedroom.
A whole different power dynamic.
So they just like completely switched it around, I guess, to give Veronica more agency, make her a more active character.
It's true. It's creepy in both regards. There was a very different feeling watching JD crawl into through somebody's window in the middle of the night versus Veronica. Though I would rather have neither of them.
I mean, from a like musical standpoint, it's like really bad to have a main character that things just happen to. You want a main character who makes the plot happen.
And that's true. She really did seek out JD, and she made that plot happen. She wanted that plot multiple times that night.
I mean, in both cases, the other party always reciprocates. I mean, maybe they're a little taken aback through like the window crawling, but then like they're both really into it. They're both like freaks.
Right. Lord, these two people are made for each other.
And you know, it's 'cause you're beautiful. You say you're numb inside, but I just can't agree. So the world's unfair. Keep it locked out there. I'm losing the
Connor, I'm not gonna lie. I would pay to our own Patreon if I could just have you redo the entire Heathers musical.
So the part I just quoted is when Veronica breaks the Dead Girl Walking song to sample tune of Beautiful Again. Mm-hmm. To basically tell JD, it's like, I know you say that the world is awful and you numb yourself from the pain, but like I think you're really fun and cool. And if you just like opened yourself up, I think we could have something great. And basically, I mean, there's a lot of fire and ice imagery that they use in the lyrics. So this is at the point where she melts him and ignites something new inside of him.
Right. She ignites this sort of self-confidence inside of himself where he's no longer acting from a place of being an outsider and being angry at his dad and angry at the world at large. He now feels like he has a sense of purpose, a drive, somebody to commiserate with, somebody who understands him more than he thinks she understands him more than she actually does. He thinks he's found a confidant and a comrade, and he then takes that and sort of bankrolls it further, which we will see in the next song.
Right, because immediately after that song ends, there's another like couple hour time jump where Heather has like a nightmare or she's visited by the apparition of Heather Chandler. We never actually said who the three Heathers are. We didn't like actually introduce them.
Should we clear that up right quick?
Yeah, I think we should.
All right. Heather Chandler is the HBOC. I mean, never mind. The HBIC, the head bitch in charge.
I mean, she could be the head bitch on campus.
Ooh, I like that.
I mean, either vowel, I or O, is okay.
Then you got Heather McNamara, who is complacent but ultimately harmless. She's got anxiety issues. She's wealthy. Her dad owns a engagement ring business, and I think that's about as much as we know about her.
Oh, she's the cheerleading captain, and she's basically the second most powerful Heather.
That's right.
And then we have the other Heather.
The other Heather.
I can't even think of her. She's so unimportant.
Him, really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was like, oh my god, did you forget? We have done nothing but study this musical.
No, it's Heather Duke. She's the least Heather, or the lowest Heather. Heather Chandler's always like screaming at her and pushing her over and making fun of her for her bulimia. Like she's just constantly abused. And I was trying to invoke that humor by saying I can't remember her. She's not important.
Gotcha. I just like that you called her the least Heather. Like there's a Heather coefficient,
Yes.
and she just completely is like failing.
Well, she's actually more Heather than Heather McNamara if you think of like the amount of evil required to be a Heather.
That's true. Heather McNamara is just kind of, actually, I don't know.
Oh, really?
I just remembered the one song in the musical.
Yeah, okay. I mean, none of them are good. None of them are pure babies. They're all acting from like a place of pain. But Heather McNamara is the least overall evil, you know.
That's true.
She's like the easiest to redeem.
That is absolutely true.
Redemption is actually a huge theme in this musical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled broadcast. Veronica has just had sex with JD, and she has like either a nightmare or she's visited by the apparition of Heather Chandler,
right,
who appears to rebuke her. She's just like, now you're really gonna die having sex with this guy. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really interesting that this happens. I think she has like a nightmare in the movie as well, but it just really shows how she's internalized the authoritarian voice, and how she's like actually so afraid and she's so familiar with Heather Chandler that she can like create her again in her brain and like use that as justification for her actions. The ghost of Heather Chandler, or the apparition, the imaginary friend Heather Chandler appears and scares Veronica. So Veronica's like, I'm gonna go to her house and apologize to her, and for some reason I'm going to bring JD with me. And then Heather Chandler's like, all right, if you're going to apologize to me, you have to make me a Bloody Mary. She actually says something else in the musical, but I don't remember. But it's basically
a prairie oyster.
A what?
A prairie oyster.
Is that not the same as a Bloody Mary?
I thought it was a little different, but I can't remember the makings.
I mean, it's still tomato juice, Worcestershire sauce, salt, pepper, and celery.
And Tabasco.
And Tabasco, right. So JD jokingly pours Drano into it, and Veronica's like, oh my god, no, we're not going to do that. And then they make out. Veronica reaches for like the mug of Bloody Mary, but she accidentally grabs the one with the Drano in it, and JD knows, but he doesn't stop her. And they end up poisoning Heather Chandler, and she dies.
And that girl dies? Oh my god, I was not ready to watch somebody die in this movie.
Right, Violet did not know that was coming.
I did not know. I was like, oh, this is taking a weird turn. And then she just eats shit and dies, and I lost my mind.
And then, in the movie, the camera pans over to a copy of the book she had been studying for English class. Which is one of Violet's favorite titles.
Heather Chandler was reading The Bell Jar, but in the movie, Heather Chandler was not only reading The Bell Jar, she was reading the Cliff Notes version of The Bell Jar.
Veronica's like, oh no, I killed my best friend. I'm gonna get arrested. And JD's like, no, she was reading Sylvia Plath. Let's forge a suicide note. And then the next song begins. The Me Inside of Me.
The song is sung while JD and Veronica are drafting Heather's suicide note, which, let me tell you, is one of the best lead-in for a musical number I've ever heard of in my life. Yeah, they start fabricating that Heather Chandler was this defeated, lost soul who everybody could relate to and had this inner turmoil, even though she was entirely superficial in the actual story. But they write the suicide note so well and so convincingly that it becomes sort of legendary piece of reading material around the high school.
This is the loveliest suicide note I've ever read.
One of the teachers, the guidance counselor, in fact, goes so far as to make copies of the suicide note and distribute them to other people in the high school as teaching aids for what it means to let your emotions go, to show the vulnerability in yourself, which 1989, 2018, that it does not matter. That is one of the worst things I have ever heard of a educational professional doing.
No, it's actually against the guidelines. You never share a suicide note, you never share images, and you never talk about the way it was conducted.
Oh, God.
Right, they say don't ever print that's a journalism thing. It's like, you don't print the suicide note when a celebrity kills themselves and you're reporting on it.
Right.
But that's exactly what they do at this school.
And not only that, the note is so convincing and so beautifully written, kudos to Veronica. It basically turns Heather into an overnight martyr. She becomes the saint of, quiet suffering in their high school, and she becomes this relatable figure to the point that the students are starting to sing about all the ways that they either had... They start saying like, oh, Heather was the pony I never got for Christmas.
Heather is the dove outside my window. Heather is... No, she's the twin from whom I'm separated. She's the horse I never got for Christmas.
Exactly.
So... Right, she's like even more powerful in death.
In fact, at one point, her ghost, her apparition reveals itself only to Veronica. But she starts saying, holy crap, I'm bigger than John Lennon.
One more thing to note. This is a piece of satire because in real life, Heather Chandler was a massive bitch and everyone secretly hated her. But once they thought she'd committed suicide, they began to project love onto her. This is a work of satire. Please don't actually kill yourself. It won't actually make you any more popular or powerful in real life.
That is a very good note, Connor.
Just had to throw that out there because I know that's a huge criticism with literature or media that romanticizes suicide. The point of this show is not to romanticize suicide. It's to satirize people who do romanticize. So please keep that in mind.
That is absolutely true. At no point is this movie or musical or our discussion thereof meant to endorse any self-harm or suicidal tendencies or suicide in general.
Right. Heather was she's a fictional character, but you are a human being and you have more to offer to the world alive than you do dead. Murdered, suicided, or otherwise.
Because Veronica is forging Heather Chandler's handwriting, this is where we see her forging skills at the beginning of the story finally pay off.
Exactly.
In terms of moving the plot forward.
We're manufacturing a Heather now.
Exactly. We are manufacturing a Heather and copying her handwriting.
So after this all happens, there's to give you the fast forward, everybody's reacting to the death. Then Heather McNamara and Heather Duke go on this double date with Kurt and Ram, the two football players. But Heather McNamara is I don't actually want to have sex. Let me call Veronica and bring her over here so she can get date raped instead. And then they sing this really nasty song called Blue, which is why are you making my balls so blue? And there's a lot we could dig into, but I don't actually want to. Do you, Violet?
The only thing I will put in about that is I know it sounds really harsh to hear us saying date rape because it's just not a thing that people, it's just something that's really hard to hear. But they actually say that in the musical, and rightly so, because that's exactly what's happening. They are pressuring Veronica and Heather McNamara in that case to have sex, and it's a very uncomfortable scene. It is very uncomfortable to listen to. And it's sung about so casually that it actually makes you sick on your stomach.
I mean, the song itself is kind of funny and has lyrics that are interesting to dig into because they are an indictment on toxic masculinity without trying. You don't think that Kurt and Ram have that depth of thought, and they really don't, but they're ironically talking about how sick they are. I just don't want to tackle it right now. Basically, Kurt and Ram are awful rapists. Veronica and JD decide they're going to enact revenge on them.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which leads us to the Act 1 closer, Our Love is God, where Veronica and JD plan their revenge on Kurt and Ram.
A strange but powerful song.
It is so good. So the revenge plan is JD tells Veronica that he's filling a gun with tranquilizer bullets. She's going to call Kurt and Ram, and she's going to invite them to the cemetery, and they're going to have a threesome. But then JD will jump out and shoot them both with the tranquilizer. They'll forge a suicide note saying, we had to die because of our gay forbidden love. But since it's just a tranquilizer, they'll, be resuscitated in a couple of hours after, the cops have found their body and, revealed their suicide attempt, and they'll be laughingstocks. However, the name of the tranquilizer bullet is Ich lüge, which is German for I am lying. because they're actually real bullets, and JD just straight up murders them both.
All the while, a musical number is happening around this plot.
It's a love song.
It is a love song. Like JD, as I think it was Kurt, as Kurt straddling the fence trying to get away, only wearing underwear, JD has him at gunpoint, still singing the song Our Love Is God. And he's analogizing the love he and Veronica share as being equal to that of the power of God, and thus sort of absolving him of any of the wrongdoing of killing those two.
Right. There's like a single line in the movie where he tells Veronica, Our love is God. They took that one line and turned it into an entire musical number where it's like he worships their relationship. I mean, it is very like incel-ish, you know. It's like he worships this connection he has with another person so much. He's not mentally stable. But it's like he's also singing a lot about how the two of them are these gods of destruction who are going to destroy the old world and make way for a new world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what their love is.
I just have to say, like, this is one of the songs in the musical that makes me think, wow, this plot works infinitely better as a musical than it does a movie.
Our love is God.
Our love is God.
Our love is God.
Our love is God.
Our love is God. Anyway, that's the end of Act 1. Tune in next week for us to talk about Act 2.
Act 2, yay.
Yay. All right, love all of you. Stay safe.
Love you all. Be safe. Don't forget to watch us.
Wash your hands.
Be safe.
We're
Drink lots of
available
water.
on Spotify, Google Podcast Breaker, Radio Public, and many others.
Oh yeah, this is the first one we're doing. We're available on Spotify and all those other platforms now.
Yeah, we're legit now. Okay, see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Nice.